You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. And it's April, and April is Autism Awareness Month, also Autism Acceptance Month. And so I wanted to try and work with some innovators and founders who specifically have companies tackling this in order to promote their work, their companies, and of course, bring more awareness to autism. So our first guest is a good friend of mine, Dr. Uli Chettipally, who has such a remarkable story, and more importantly, this amazing mission that was really conceived as a result of the relationship he has with his daughter. So he is an award-winning physician, researcher, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in emergency medicine, clinical decision support, and digital therapeutics. And he's the founder of Sirica Therapeutics, a startup that is developing a novel device for autism using robotics, virtual reality, and video gaming. His mission is essentially just to make therapy fun and effective for children with autism and their families. And he is also the founder and president of Innovator MD, which is the world's largest innovation platform that aims to inform, inspire, and ignite solutions that revolutionize patient care. Sirica is a really fascinating company. And again, it is just that, which is they combine video gaming, robotics, and VR for children with autism in terms of how they make therapy a lot of fun. I really love what they do. I recommend that you should go and check out their website. And you can learn more at siricatx.com. That's SIRICATX.com. Now, finally, a couple of reminders. If you're a founder and you're interested in coming on the show, we want to have you on our show. You know, one of the reasons why I have State of MedTech is to help founders get awareness around their company, maybe attract some investors and get commercial traction. If you're interested in joining the show, we have a form below. Submit it to my team. My team reviews it. We try and get as many people on the show as soon as possible. We publish 2 to 3 times a week. That's why we're the number one show in medtech. And so if you're interested, check the link below. And then lastly, if you are interested in learning more about Uli's company, maybe investing in it, definitely go check them out on LinkedIn. Reach out to Uli. And if anything, follow him along because he has really inspiring posts. A few of them are quite tearjerkers, if I say so myself. So with that being said, let's get on to our episode with Dr. Uli Chettipally, founder and CEO of Sirica Therapeutics. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And today's guest is actually an old friend of mine, somebody who was actually a guest on one of the other podcasts that I started a long time ago over at what was Potrero. They're now rebranded as Accurate Medical, and that's Uli Chettipally, Dr. Uli Chettipally. So Dr. Chettipally and I have known each other for a while, and you know he's somebody who's very well known in the medtech innovator space as a entrepreneur, among many other things, a clinician, and you know recently. You know, Dr. Chettipally, and I'm gonna, you know, just because we know each other, I'm going to start calling you Uli. Yeah, you know, you started a company called Sirica Therapeutics, and for me, especially as a new father, you know, your company has a very personal story to it, specifically as it relates to your daughter. And so it really touched me. And I remember I've been meaning to have you on the show, and I've been really bad about this because I've done the show. I think we're up to 170, 180 episodes. So I assume that some of my old friends, people like you who I've interviewed in the past, I'm like, oh yeah, Uli's been on the show. And when I checked, I'm like, oh, I haven't had him on the show yet. And I sent you that message on LinkedIn about how emotional I got with that video that you posted of your daughter. So maybe let's just start out with the very first thing, which is like who's Uli Chettipally? What is your background? And then we'll kind of get into the story of the company.
Sure. You know, thanks for having me back, Omar. It's a pleasure always to talk with you, and especially, you know, with your presence in the medtech community. It's a privilege. You know, my background is I grew up in India, and when I came to the U.S., you know, I was on a research job, and I also did my residency in emergency medicine. I was at UCLA, got an MPH, and my first job was here in the San Francisco Bay Area with Kaiser. And I was on the administration track, and, you know, everything was going great. And then when the dot-com boom happened, you know, I took a sabbatical and actually checked out, what the technology people are doing. And I even did a startup at that time. Of course, the startup didn't go anywhere. It crashed with the market. But then I caught the technology bug. And when I came back to Kaiser, I decided to switch gears to research. And the reason at that time was that, Kaiser was one of the first ones that implemented paperless, EHR records, and everything became electronic. And I was fascinated by the fact that, you could actually take all that data and make care better, make physicians better, make better decisions, and so improve patient outcomes. And so that started my journey on the technology side. And we were able to develop a platform that was looking at clinical decision support for physicians, and it was a grand success. We published about 100 papers out of that work. But then just before that period, we had our daughter, first child, and she was diagnosed with autism when she was 3. And so, immediately my antennas went up and trying to find out what's happening in this field. What does the research say? What are the treatment outcomes? What treatments are there? It's a very sparse field, I would say, for research at that time. And I started, educating myself about it. And then, we started the ABA program, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis, like a therapy. But I was not really satisfied. And so about 5 years ago, I took an early retirement from my job. And I said, I need to explore this. I need to explore all that is there in innovation space in the startup world around autism. And when I started doing that, I found one company that was developing this technology using robotics, virtual reality, and video gaming for treatment of stroke. And that's when I thought, okay, this is something I can develop further. And so that's how all my background as a physician, as a researcher, as a technology enthusiast, it all culminated in this moment when I started working on this area.
It's fantastic, and I love that story. I want to ask kind of what might seem like a silly question, but at least I don't think it is, which is everybody has heard of autism, everybody knows of autism, but maybe would it be nice if you can kind of give sort of a deeper definition to like what exactly is autism from the clinical standpoint and sort of beyond that?
Sure. Autism is the second most common neurodevelopmental disorder. The first one being ADHD, but autism, or also known as autism spectrum disorders, it's very common. 1 in 36 children that are being born right now will have autism. And how do you diagnose it? There are several components. One of them is communication and speech delay. The second one is limited social interactions. And the third one is, odd behaviors. These constellation of symptoms together, forms this autism spectrum. And when we say spectrum, there is, a full wide variety of people within that group. The low functioning people where they cannot speak or they cannot do anything without assistance. You start there, and then you have high functioning people that can potentially hold a job or be able to live independently. And so there's this full spectrum of people within this autism disorder. And since it is, the second most common, so the other big issue with autism is that it's a lifelong condition, and there's no cure. There's no blood test or there's no scan to diagnose it. There's no way to prevent it because we don't know what is causing it. So, and that's a challenge. And there's no definitive treatment which can cure autism. And so that made me think, this is probably the toughest clinical problem there is out there. And so my journey with, looking for a solution was very difficult because there was nothing out there that says, okay, this is what you do, this is what you do, and so that's how my quest started. And autism is a very unique problem, and it is growing at a rate of 8% every year, and we don't know what the cause is. That's scary.
Yeah, no, I would say that's pretty significant because for a lot of chronic diseases that are, at least on the radar for the CDC and NIH, usually their growth rates are, anywhere from like 2 to 3 or 4%, which is considered like really high and aggressive. And so autism, you said, is 8%, right?
Yeah.
So it's a huge issue. So what are some of the current problems that we see today when it comes to the, is the issue early diagnosis of autism? What are the main issues when it comes to it? Because there's a screening, the diagnostics phase of it, and then of course there's treatment. What part of the industry, or at least a space, is there a lack of innovation per se?
Yeah, I think all of these areas that I mentioned, whether it's prevention, whether it's diagnostics, whether it's treatment, all of those areas need a lot of innovation. And so when we talk about why is it growing, and some people say, oh, it is increased awareness, or more people are being diagnosed because that may be partly true, but that cannot explain why even the low functioning part of autism is also growing. The schools are not able to manage with the growth of this population because they need special education, and which is hard, and you need one-on-one on most kids, and so they are not able to manage it. Same thing is happening on the insurance side. The insurance companies keep increasing their costs because they're not able to manage the number of people that are being diagnosed and that need treatment. And so there's a huge burden on the society, on the schools, on the daycare programs, on the insurance companies, on the providers. There's a challenge. And for parents, you can't find enough therapists to be able to manage this kind of an onslaught of patients that are coming through the system. So it's not just a blip. It's not just people are on the high end, being diagnosed. That may be a small part of it, but the bigger chunk is that even the lower functioning in the middle tier people are also being increased in the numbers.
That's
a challenge.
That's a huge challenge, and I think you're right. And I think you bring up a good point, which is, I think everything in this world, healthcare or not, is pretty much dictated based on how much insurance companies are willing to tolerate it. And even if we look in geopolitical environments, certain things that are taking place, I always think in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, this will continue until insurance companies decide that, we're not going to allow this to happen. Because they have, I put insurance companies up there with banks. Like, they have a lot more power than you would think. But especially with patient populations, when you have like an 8% year over year growth, like that's a lot of people. And so right now, like, just to put that into like more clear numbers, how many people with autism exist today in the United States, just in the US? Do you have that off the top of your head?
A rough estimate is about 7 million. But then, reporting is very sparse, and
that's of who's diagnosed, right?
Yeah, it's just an estimate, and so
is it? And again, I'm bad with my math sometimes, but off the top of my head, so please correct me. So then, if it's 7 million today and it's an 8% growth rate, then that's like a little over 500,000 people every year who are adding to that number and growing it, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is growing. And because you look at the CDC numbers on ratios, for example, it used to be 1 in 100 plus births, and then it became 60, 40, and now it is 36. That means it's becoming more and more prevalent.
Do you feel like also because there's we're getting better at recognizing that there is a spectrum to it, and so certain levels of autism that were kind of either misdiagnosed or not, or kind of slipped past, like maybe 5-10 years ago, we have better ways to screen for that and get parents help?
That is true, but when you expect that kind of changes. There have been changes in the diagnostic criteria, and also there have been changes in increased awareness. So when you see, so let's say if the growth is going like this, and when there's a change in diagnosis, you will see a blip, or you'll see increased awareness, you'll see a bump, and then it should continue in the same direction. It'll plateau if it's not growing, but you're not seeing this blip, but it still continues to grow. The growth should not continue. Let's say, if you think that, let's say the prevalence is, say 1%, okay? With increased diagnosis, there'll be 2%, but it'll stay at 2%. It will not go to 3% or 4%, but that's what is happening. So when you increase the diagnosis, it should go up and then stay stable if it is the criteria that you're talking about. Autism diagnosis, they are not stable. They continue to grow. And any kind of awareness program, any kind of, it has a short life, where it'll come back to stable levels. It hasn't come back. And that's the scary part.
Got it. So let's talk about Sirica. So you founded a company called Sirica Therapy, because you describe yourself as a digital therapeutic. And so we've heard of digital therapies, but for some of the investors who are listening in the audience, like, what makes a therapy digital, right? Because I think it's like digital health. When you say digital health, you think of all kinds of things, right? So how do you define it as a digital therapy?
So yeah, that's a good question, and a lot of investors actually, are trying to figure out, where do you fit? Is it a device? Is it a therapeutic? So a digital therapy is any therapy that is provided through a digital medium. It could be an app, it could be a program that you deliver through information technology, which makes things better. That's my simple definition of digital therapy. But then any digital therapy will have some kind of a medium or some kind of a conduit to deliver that. And that conduit could be your laptop, that could be your iPad, that could be your phone. In our case, we have a hardware that includes a robotic device, that includes virtual reality goggles, and that involves video gaming. And so there is this complex, delivery mechanism, but the therapy itself is digital.
Got it. That makes sense. And something that I saw that was interesting is that you talk about the use of VR and robotics. Walk us through. So the moment that someone's child is diagnosed with autism, where does Sirica come into play when it comes to, like, I guess, the spectrum of care that person receives, and how do they get started? If you can walk us through that.
Yeah. Right now, we're still in the R&D phase. And so the prototype that we have developed in partnership with this company, that is mainly designed for, teenagers and adults. So there's a height requirement, 4 feet 11 inches. The reason why is obviously because, it's easier to build for adults rather than children, tiny parts. Also, when we are doing research, we want to be able to have a good number of people that have established a diagnosis and established that there's no other options for them, right? Especially the adult population, there's no treatments available other than, of course, drugs. And even those drugs they're not specific for autism. They are generic, depression drugs or anxiety drugs. And so we thought we will attack, a problem for a population that has no other easy therapeutic solutions. And so we any person, usually teenagers and adults, are the ones that are ideal for this treatment.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. What was the hardest part about developing? I guess you have an MVP model. What was the more difficult part about it? Because you mentioned on your website you mentioned a lot of things such as again you talk about robotics, VR, and video gaming. So these are all like very complex areas, obviously very expensive. So what is the actual product? What is it like? Like, is it a headset? Is it what does it look like?
So the whole platform is a combination of things. Video games. Again, specific types of games. So that's not too hard. VR, it's a generic VR headset, but we can use Apple's or anybody's headset. The most difficult part is, how do you create a virtual environment that is so deeply immersive that you forget that you're in the real world? So technically what you're trying to do is you're trying to hijack the brain, put it into a state of deep immersion, and then provide these challenges so that it stimulates the brain to create new neural pathways, also known as neuroplasticity. So that's the bottom line. But how do you create that? To be able to create that, you need to have a machine. So this has a robotic device where you're riding on it. So like a recumbent bicycle. And when you put on VR goggles, it'll place you inside a video game. So you become part of the character inside that video game. And so you're riding a vehicle inside the video game. And whatever you do on the machine will be replicated in the game. And whatever happens in the game will be replicated in the machine. For example, if you're riding fast, the vehicle inside the game will go fast. If you're going uphill, it becomes harder, and then the direction is pointing goes up. If you hit a rock, you'll feel a jolt in your in the machine. So we're translating all these experiences that are happening in the video game into a physical world. And whatever is happening in the physical world, where you're turning or riding faster or cruising, all that is replicated in the video game. So it's a very closed loop communication. It's a physics engine. That is the most hardest part. How do you replicate something so close to reality that you'll forget that it is virtual?
That's fascinating. Yeah, and I think this whole area of cognitive neuroscience and neuroplasticity is fascinating. I had so there's a whole field called contemplative neuroscience, which is around like mindfulness and a lot of neuroplasticity and everything. So one of the pioneers of that, Dr. David Vago, actually came on the show just like a couple of weeks ago. I should definitely get you guys connected. It's a fascinating area, just because I think that very much like our oceans, there's very little that we know about the brain, how it functions, like how are new neurons, developed, and how's neuroplasticity work, And so I think it's really fascinating, because what I like about this is that it provides an actionable and a very practical approach for something that, is very difficult for a lot of parents, right? Not all parents have the access or financial means, right, to get their their child taken care of. For you live in the Bay Area, which is great, but I think about parents who are like out in middle America or different areas where they're not close to like a big metropolitan area, and of course in those areas they're not going to have schools that are dedicated. I have actually my barber, one of his children is special needs and needed some care, and so they actually moved out to California just for that. Not every family can do that.
Yeah.
So for Sirica, when it's being administered, is it something that's done within the school system? Is it within a doctor's office? What is that like?
So initially, when we launch our product, it's going to be going into a doctor's and therapist's office. The other places it can go is a school, special needs schools, daycare programs for young adults and adults. Potentially in employer-based programs. So it can be placed anywhere. All we need is space, and operating is very simple. Anybody, even a high school student can operate it, because you don't need any special techniques, because everything is operated through the cloud. And so the therapist will be watching the monitoring, the progress of the patient, and everything. Thousands of data points are going from the machine, from the game, and from the patient, and they're going into the cloud, where our therapists will be watching and monitoring the program. Now, it's a great point when you say that, middle of, nowhere, how do you do that? Well, all you need is one person, just with basic training and a 12 by 12 foot space. That's all it needs. And everything can be done remotely. And so people can come in and be able to get that treatment. And it is, because it is a machine, it's scalable, right? It's not, a specialist, or it's not a highly skilled person that has to be there. And so it's infinitely scalable. And because it is controlled by remotely, and everything is software run.
Got it. Yeah. And this kind of reminds me of a similar issue that you see in physical therapy, which is, physical therapy, I mean, it's a very involved and, lack of a better term, physical process, but you don't have enough physical therapists to do these things at scale. That's why, like, the introduction of robotics, like Harmonix has a great device, really helps put this at scale. Because again, like, yeah, maybe you have a therapist, but is not every therapist is created equally. They don't have the same training, everything. I want to share my screen and for those who are watching on YouTube or on Spotify to see this. But I want to bring up, you guys have a nice video on your website. I just want to play it so people actually see this, right?
Yeah.
So let's take a look at this device, and maybe you can give us some color commentary on it.
Yeah. So this was our last prototype where we did a clinical study using 9 patients. These are real patients, 9 patients with autism. And we wanted to see, number one, is it safe to use? Are there any safety issues? People comment that, autistic people may not be able to put on VR goggles for so long, or may not be able to sit in the chair for so long. Well, we busted that myth. They are able to sit an average of 28 minutes in the chair because it's so engaging. It's so much fun. And so they gave us a rating of 9.25 out of 10. And everybody loved it, and they wanted to come back. None of them had any adverse reactions. We were worried that, people might freak out, or people might not tolerate the sound or the sights, or maybe it'll cause seizures, and all of those things, we were worried about. But none of that happened. So we came out with flying colors, during this study, and we were able to show that, yes, all levels of people can use this machine. And the next version is going to be the version that is going to go into market probably next year. So that's what we're working on right now.
Fantastic.
The R&D part of it.
Yeah, and again, what I like about this is that it's a not, I'm not like anti-pharma, but I think that the general patient population and families are looking for non-pharmaceutical interventions, right?
Non-invasive.
And I mean, for pharmaceutical interventions, a lot of people don't understand. But if you show this, right, the value prop is like very visual, and you get it. And I think that it's I think while it's designed for autism, I feel like it can its applications can be sort of applied, like, beyond just that specific disease state, right?
And the original company is developing it for stroke rehabilitation.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. That's exactly what I didn't want to jump on, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
So let's talk like a few numbers again for some of the investors who are listening to this. So we talked about the market. It's about 7.5 million people. It's growing 8% year over year.
Yeah.
Current like if somebody's diagnosed with autism, what are the current standards for treatment? I don't think there are really any.
Yeah, well, there is the ABA therapy, which is applied behavior analysis, which can take anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week of therapy. It's like one-on-one. A therapist will be there all the time, and there's some evidence that it works. Yes, it does, but that's so painful, and it's so expensive, and also it needs people.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say it needs people, and to guide the patient.
Yeah.
And I guess this is where I'm seeing the value of Sirica, which is because it's a video game, because it's physically engaging, it's visually engaging. It kind of immediately shortcuts that pathway.
Yeah.
And so for you, I think you may have said this before, but like if ABA takes 30 to 40 hours a week, then Sirica conservatively what amount per week?
So right now, our protocol involves half an hour treatment, 5 days a week, once a day. So I would say 2.5, 3 hours, max 5 hours a week. That's what we are looking at. And as far as personnel is concerned, like I said, any high school student can run the machine.
Silly question. How do you, if you're a parent, for example, not a clinician or a researcher, how do you know it's working?
So our next study, and for which we are raising our pre-seed round, is where we'll look at efficacy. And with that study, we expect to, most probably it's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we'll be recruiting patients soon. We need about 25, 30 patients, and we'll run the study for 4 to 6 weeks. We're still finalizing the protocol, but we're targeting 3 main symptoms. One is sleep. How can we improve the quality of sleep? Number 2, anxiety. That's a big part of behaviors. And the third is aggressive behavior. We think that it'll have a positive impact on all 3 symptoms from our preliminary research into other areas, and also from the brief feedback we got from patients in the last study. And so at the next study, that's what we're going to test. We're going to see if that'll work for these symptoms, and that's what we will be monitoring in the study, and also we'll be letting people know they'll have to maintain diaries and track their symptoms.
Got it. So to talk dollar figures, what are you aiming to raise for your pre-seed right now?
So we have a target of $800,000, out of which we already raised 200, and we need to raise 600 more. And mainly we are looking at angel investors or even families that have, that are affected by autism. Family offices or angels or individuals that are interested in seeing this innovation come to market. We think that this is one of I've dedicated my next 10 years to develop this. So we are totally, and I have a solid team. And so we will, one way or the other, we'll bring this, but it'll be great to bring along some people that want to see innovation in this space.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about this, which is kind of rare, I think with a lot of founders, they have some personal story as to like why they start a company, but I can't think of a stronger, more powerful story than yours, where your company and your mission is driven because of your daughter, right? And it's just like I'm getting like just choked up, like, because I'm thinking about it again. I showed that video to my wife. She cried. I cried. Like I told her, I was like, this is one of the guys who I know in my industry. Like, this is why I'm very proud to work in my industry.
Yeah. Every time I see that video, I get choked up because, she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me."
Oh my God, please. Uli, you're going to make me cry. It's about like my eyes are getting watery already. I'm trying not to think about it. So
no, I have glasses to hide that.
Yeah. But no, I think it's fantastic. And, I'm hoping that again through this show, like for those who are interested, go to SiricaTX.com. That's SIRICATX.com. Of course, Uli, you're really you're very active on LinkedIn. You make some great content, so they can connect with you that way. Are there any conferences that you're going to be going to personally as an attendee or anything maybe that clinicians or investors can keep an eye out for?
Not much this year. I usually attend the Stanford conference, autism conference, but we will start that right after our study, because right now we are, really trying to make this happen. So we're working hard.
Perfect.
Probably later this year, I'll be at conferences and propagating this idea.
Fantastic. Well, we'll do our best on the show to kind of help amplify this and get more attention on it. So, well, that being said, Uli, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to having you back on, for updates, especially when you guys start doing your next study. So, with that being said, again, for the audience, go to SiricaTX.com. That's SIRICATX.com to learn more about the company. Reach out to them. Uli's active on LinkedIn. That being said, I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.